Um, Hi. I I don't know why that stream ended. That was weird. So let me get my dashboard and stuff set back up. So yeah, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there. I just looked over all of a sudden and it said stream ended. Or I saw something change in my peripheral, and when I looked over it said stream ended. So let me get this linked to on my website because that one is now a dead stream. So let's go there. Oh, may as well have my screen shared while I'm doing that though, so you all can. Boom. There you go. Oh, right. I'll be right back. I can get rid of that. Ryan is here now. Hi. Okay. Weird. So let me get this set back up. Hopefully you're rejoining it. I don't think there was anybody watching it when it crashed. But if you were, or you're just joining us now, I'm recovering from a crash, so give me a sec. But please go to thecalculustutor.com, submit your math questions. I'll be checking the submissions as soon as I'm set back up. Yeah, there we go. Hope you all are having a chill Tuesday evening. Nothing like a little bit of math late at night. Honestly, my hope a little bit is that the night streams are the only popular ones. The after school things just don't really get any traction, but the night streams consistently get people in. Once people find out about this and it's getting the traffic that it's going to get, if that is consistently night streams, I would kind of love that. My partner and I have slightly offset schedules. They're sort of an earlier riser, but a little bit earlier to bed. I'm a later riser, but stay up later. And if one of the things I'm doing after they go to bed, with my sort of evening time is popping on here and answering math questions, that seems pretty ideal to me. Oh, okay, this loaded. Let me get it updated. One thing, so I can talk and do stuff at the same time, but usually, especially as a teacher, the thing I'm doing and the thing I'm talking about are the same thing, are related to each other. Like I'm doing the math while I'm explaining the math. one aspect of stream, and since I knew that's largely what I was going to do while I was streaming, I wasn't terribly worried about, the multitasking of it all and having a conversation while doing stuff. But just sort of having a conversation while just doing these other type of tasks, that is a split that's a little tough for me right now. Maybe that's just a nighttime thing. All right, night stream rises again. Yeah, I'm not. That was so weird. But I guess it's going to happen sometimes, right? Like just the way a data stream would work. I mean, I guess, and I'm sure they have a lot of like redundancies and stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of network stuff and data interruption that the stream actually deals with just fine. So something happened that interrupted the stream enough that it wasn't able to recover from it. It just dropped down. So, okay, this is good. And we can do this. Editing my website for whatever reason, oh, that bogs my computer down. Especially if I do it while I'm streaming. That, I guess, in particular. Sometimes I need to. You have a different machine, but I just, that's a tablet. I just don't think. What is this? Okay, stream rises again. Oh, there's save and exit. You know what I should do? I should adjust my hours. Or I'll just do it Wednesday. I have jury duty on Thursday, which is like great, happy to do my civic duty. What happened there? Oh. It is, but they give you lots of warning. Like I've known for at least a month. Yeah, they gave me at least a full 4 weeks lead time, if not longer. So you can like plan around it, but like it doesn't make it not a disruption. But you know what? It's a disruption that's equally true for everybody. We haven't, at least I've not heard anybody suggest a better solution. Give me one moment here. There we go. Okay. I've, not heard a suggestion of a better way to necessarily do things that allows us to all more or less equally share the responsibility, and therefore allows everybody equal access to that shared resource of a jury of your peers. That's a really ultimately great aspect of our justice system, though it could probably be improved. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, there's no way to stop it from being a disruption. And Yeah, this is all a little disrupt. The streams have been low trafficked, so I don't think it's going to make too big of a difference. And I'm sort of preemptively canceling it because, like, I don't know if I'll be able to get home in time to run the stream, but like, I have had I think I've had trading. This is like the third time I've had it since I've moved to Eugene. That's nuts. I think one of the times I was out of there by like 10 o'clock or something. They realized they didn't need. So I'm just preemptively canceling. So I don't have to play that game of like, am I going to be able to make it? Am I not going to be able to? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. I'm just going to Wednesday night. I'm just going to set up the website and everything to make it clear there isn't a stream on Thursday, and that'll be that. So let's find some calculus to work on. I thought I was maybe going to have some Python coding stuff to maybe work on and show you, because that was a project I was working on earlier today. Honestly, like leading up to the stream, but I finished it like an hour and a half. Well, like an hour and a half ago now, about 45 minutes before the stream, and I just got all the windows and stuff, just everything all cleaned up. I didn't know how long it was going to take me, so I thought I might still be working on it when I started the stream, and so I could like show you guys that. I'll show you at some point. It's not actually finished, but I finished the stuff I was trying to do tonight. So let's find maybe some calculus or something to work on, right? You know what I thought about doing? So there is, sorry, I'm getting my records all updated. This would be a cool thing to show at some point too. There's a lot of stuff I need to track for tutoring, right? I need to track when I met with students, how long I met with them for, and you know, the nature of client work like this is, you know, I need notes. I need to record during that time what was going on during that time. What did I use it for? Like in a tutoring session, what topics do we cover? Just any possible thing, right? So I need a place to be able to record that. And it would be really great to be able to just record it as it happens throughout my day, but then have all of the stuff for like client A consolidated. So if I need to look through my notes for client A, there's just one place to go. I can go to client A and it just takes all of the notes I've generated and has them all together. And there's things that do that. There's various softwares and things like that, but they have extras and sometimes they cost and they have features that I don't necessarily need, or they don't do the thing I do need in quite the way that I want. And it's just like a whole separate service. And I built my own using Google Sheets. I have a main journal log Google Sheet with tabs for every month. I want to show this off at some point because I'm pretty proud of it. And then that sheet, when I update it, then whatever client I made an entry for, it then takes that entry and puts it into a separate Google Sheet for that client with all of the different, say, projects or different, for my records, every term I work with a student is sort of a separate project in my internal organization. But yeah. And so it not only does it collect all of the data about when I meet with students for how long, and my notes from that session. I also have another sheet where when I get paid, I can record the payment and who and which client that payment is for. And then in that central client document where all the client notes live, it's also tracking total hours and total like compensation. And I can look at a glance to see, does this client have prepaid hours that we're just working on? Does this client owe me for multiple hours? Is this, do I need to like, have I actually sent a payment request to this client and they're accumulating, so I should send it? That sort of thing. It lets me know the balance, right? And this all happens within Google Sheets, and that's it, just Google Sheets. Granted, I also did some app scripting using the Google document or Google Sheets like scripting thing that's provided by Google. There's nothing additional there. It's just a thing most people don't use. But yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. It works, and I've been using it for years at this point. I have multiple years of this system archived. And I update it, upgrade it here and there, little bits at a time. And actually, I have a bug in it right now where it's messing up dates. Partially because I changed my date formatting. Anyway, that's just me rambling. But the reason I talk about it here, this is math related, spreadsheets, but like all of this is, for me at least, is related to my understanding of my relationship with math. This is all me applying skills and knowledge that I ultimately credit to, the broad category of knowledge that I call math, right? But like programming is applied math. I'm doing this in spreadsheets, a very numerical, very mathematical piece of software. But also, I think the problem-solving process that I learned in math, what am I trying to say? The problem-solving process I learned as math processes, that's what I'm trying to say. The processes you learn when you're learning to solve math problems, like math class math problems, right? Which isn't real math. But those processes, the skill that is useful for you to learn, but is difficult for us to teach, is how to then take those processes and sort of abstract them a bit and use them for things that aren't just like the very specific math things you're doing in class. I'm talking kind of abstractly here, so let me tell you a little kind of what I mean. But of course, while I was talking, my tablet went to sleep. No, I really should just... I should. When I'm in my tutoring profile on this computer, I should just set it for it to not go to sleep. Or at least don't go to sleep for an hour. which is the length of most of my tutoring sessions. And chances are I'm not going to let this sit for an entire hour during one of these sessions. So, yeah. Okay. So as a for instance, for the type of thing, this type of like math skill that you learn, or skill that you learn in math class as a math skill, but that is applicable outside of math. You see me? You see me. There we go. The first thing that comes to mind, though it's not, the more I think about it, it's not quite the example I want it to be, but I think it's a good starting place, is functions. So in Algebra 1, you learn about functions a little bit, but you don't have access to, you're not being taught about any very interesting functions. So I think most students don't really learn about functions until Algebra 2. But okay, so let's say you're a student who has made it to Algebra 2, and you sort of have been introduced to functions. So things like f of x equals, and I'll do an algebra level one. We could do 3x minus 5 or something like that, and that's a perfectly good algebra function, math function. And we have all sorts of these, and we give them different names, g of x, and we can have all sorts of crazy stuff going on here, right? We could have 7x to the 10th minus x to the negative 7 all over the square root of x or something. We don't need to make it more complex than necessary, but right. But we can have something. But this is also a perfectly valid function. We could have something like h. Ooh, actually, let's do. Oh, I'm just blanking on anything, but that's one of the things that's going to be a good thing for me to practice at these night streams. Is I think my improvisation and my sort of quick examples and stuff are going to suffer a little bit more. That's what I'm not as sharp on when it gets late. But as a for instance, on a previous stream, we wrote a Python script that took a temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, so I'll call it F, and converted it to degrees Celsius, so I'll call it C. Right? And we wrote that as Python code, computer code. But we could also come up with a formula for it, which is f minus 32 times 5 ninths. Okay, sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. 5 ninths f minus 32. There we go. Also a function, right? This one just, instead of being named a lowercase letter, it's named a capital letter. Instead of the input variable, which we just normally make x, but it doesn't matter what it is, our input variable is more expressive. It's f, right? Because this represents a function that takes a temperature in Fahrenheit, f, and will result in a temperature in Celsius, C. But see, this is one of the things that I think makes math functions harder to learn than the related thing, computer functions. So these are, so I'm talking, oops, here, we don't need to delete it, but I'm talking generally about the idea here of functions. These are math functions. This is how functions tend to look in math class. But, so that's the math skill you learn. You learn how to deal with functions like these, which are pretty abstract, honestly. But I've been dealing, just today, in fact, I've been dealing with, and I deal a lot with, computer functions. And so, just as an example, so I said we wrote this in Python, and if I wrote this in Python, I would call it Celsius, and I would call the function itself Celsius, because in computer programming, not only is it unusual to use single letter functions, it's super bad practice. Because they're not expressive, because they don't tell you what they do. So you just write out what it does. And in fact, a better name for that might be to call it 2 Celsius, right? As in it converts to Celsius. Oftentimes we want our functions, because functions do things, we want them to express what they do. Just calling the function Celsius isn't super clear. What about Celsius, right? But 2 Celsius, that tells us what it does. Then we can be really clear about the input variable as well. Variables in computer programming, also super rare to have a 1-letter named variable. That's also bad practice. That doesn't tell you what that variable, that variable represents, right? So, I'm gonna open a tab and make sure I know how to spell foreign. No way. You're not gonna. I should have just spelled it. You're not gonna believe me. Fahrenheit. I totally spelled it right, you all. Ugh. That's fine. You don't have to believe me. So we could call this degrees Fahrenheit. And when you're computer programming, right, when you're writing computer code, you don't really have to worry terribly about hard to spell variable and function names, because there's autocomplete that will recognize variables or functions you've already named. And if you start to type those, it'll say, is this a variable you meant? And you can just say, yeah. You can start typing degrees. And even if you have a degrees Celsius variable and a degrees Fahrenheit variable, it'll bring them both up, and you can select the Fahrenheit one, and it'll just auto-complete it, and it'll be spelled the same correctly every time. So we could write that. And so this means the same thing as this, but this is in computer code, and then usually you would do some other symbol. In Python, it's a colon, and then you indent, and you have you have more code here, and that code would just tell the computer how to do all of this, to take the degrees Fahrenheit, subtract 32 from it, multiply it by 5, divide by 9, right? And so this is a computer function. And so everything that's true about these functions is also true about these functions. They are computer code and computer programming is highly mathematical. And so the reason they're called functions in programming is because they're called functions in mathematics. Like, the programming came from mathematics. The people that designed the first mechanical computers and just designed well before they can be implemented, the first digital computers and things like that. They did it using, they were mathematicians, and they did it using math notation. So yeah, but that said, everything you learn here is directly applicable here. Now, these are more complicated, so there's even more stuff here, but all of that stuff is also math stuff. So part of the reason this wasn't the most satisfying example to me was simply because computer programming is already just really applied math, right? I think everything is really is actually just applied math, but computer programming definitely is. So like it's not the strongest example of my case, but I want to talk more about that in these streams, right? Like, so this is my hope, is I can only bring me to these, right? And so my hope is that viewers, people in chat, people who submit questions, my hope is that they bring some other stuff, or bring the other stuff, which is, in terms of like, how does math intersect your life? Where in your life does math cause problems or create benefits? Where in your life is math currently causing a problem, but you see that, maybe sort of see how to get it to, how to convert it to that, right? Those are things we can talk about here. And yeah, more of this sort of stuff. And so as we're talking, more things will occur to me. And I think that's also going to be a thing that I have to acknowledge is hard here. I'm not bouncing off anybody right now. I'm just sort of riffing. I'm excited for people to bring particular problems, whether from homework or just from life. There's all sorts of, heck, you know what? I'll start. Oh, you know what I want to start doing? What occurred to me? I've gotten into back into Balatro lately over the last few weeks. I got into it over sort of winter break last year. My younger brother had started playing, and I had kind of heard reference to it, but hadn't really looked at it. And he was playing, and I watched it, and that inspired me to download it. And I played a ton winter break and over the next like month or so. And then I put it down, and over the last few weeks, I picked it back up. And I want to start capturing. So first of all, I think of Balatro as just math the game, right? It is just, at least you don't have to play it this way, but I think to do well, you do have to have some amount of mathematical intuition. Understanding, I don't think, just intuition. Oftentimes understanding can enhance your intuition, though. So like people who have more math understanding will probably be able to get more out of their, or stretch their math intuition further, get more bang for their buck, right? But anyway, so the whole game is just super mathy, whether players realize it or not. And you end up in these dilemmas while playing. So the math of it is all probability, because it's all just cards and what are you likely to get and things like that. But you run into these dilemmas where to try to figure out what you should do, it's just a very complicated question of probability. And honestly, most of the time probably not even that complicated, just more complicated than at least I can deal with mentally. It just overflows my sort of my math buffer uh, for my brain. Um, there's too many different things to hold on to and consider in different combinations. So, all of that said, the idea I had is I want to start taking screenshots of those moments. Um, and I want to start talking about those on here a little bit too, about like, okay, here's the situation I found myself in Balatro. And here's the decision I was facing. And then maybe here's the dilemma I was facing. And then, I can be like, here's the decision I made. Was it the right one? Should I have made a different or another decision? But I think so. I'm going to do my best to capture both the situation and then all of the other relevant details. And then I think we should be able to sit down and mathematically determine the best course of action. And then we can also see if, based, once I make my decision, we can see how things play out and see if the way things played out sort of fit our expectation based on the probabilities. Because like your best bet in Balatro, for people who play it, I guess is who this is directed at. Your best bet in Balatro is to always follow the odds, right? Like there's no, as far as in my experience with Balatro so far, there is never, ever, ever, ever any reason, based on all the information you have, so long as you are considering all of the information, there's never, ever, ever, ever any reason to make anything other than to move towards anything other than the most likely outcome. I'm not phrasing that correctly because the way I said it, it doesn't say what I was actually meant to say. There are situations in Balatro where an unlikely situation, like getting an unlikely draw, is the only thing that will save you. Is the only thing that will keep you from a game over. So that's not what I meant. That you always. It's that all things being equal, or rather, if you have the choice between to draw on an unlikely hand to come up and a likely hand to come up, and the likely hand will still win you the round, then you should always go with that. There's no reason to ever. There's very little advantage to gambling, to risking. Sometimes you're forced to, because if you don't, if that most likely outcome actually will result in a game over, you need the unlikely thing. So I guess my point is, your goal is to put yourself. My goal when I play it is to use the jokers and all of the other things, the tarot cards and everything, to make it so that the most likely thing to happen is the thing that gives me the most chips, right? Is the thing that scores me the most, to make that thing the most likely thing. And I'm for like people that play a lot of Balatro, I'm probably just stating the obvious here, hopefully. But I'm considering, from a mathematical perspective, this is also, people who arrived at it purely from a gameplay perspective and like optimizing their gameplay, you arrived at the mathematically optimal. I think maybe I'm wrong. I would love to know that I'm wrong. I've looked up basically nothing about Balatro. It's sort of like a Rubik's Cube for me. I don't know how to solve a Rubik's Cube. I'm aware that a Rubik's Cube can be solved. And I'm also aware that there is an algorithm that does it, right? Like there's a set of moves. And it's not just a single set of moves, but it's like a flow chart. There's an algorithm, a flow chart of moves that you can go from any starting position to a solved Rubik's Cube, right? And if you know that, and so I haven't looked that up because once I look that up, it's not a puzzle anymore, right? And so I still have, oh, it's not out. I usually have a Rubik's Cube. I'm not sure where it's at right now, but a Rubik's Cube is still a puzzle to me because I've never figured out that algorithm for myself. And every few years, it feels nice to pick up and mess with a Rubik's Cube and try to think about it maybe in a way I've never thought about it, or try to, figure something out that I've never figured out before. But if I just look up the algorithm, I can't do that anymore. There isn't any, I can still fidget with it, but that's all it is. It's just fidgeting. And and anytime I fidget, I would probably inevitably fall into that algorithm because it's a thing you can just practice. And like that's like you see these speed cubers, right? That's what they do. They practice the algorithm, and eventually you memorize it. Your brain you can learn. Your brain learns algorithms too. It's similar for me. Balatro feels similar. If I look up the optimal strategies and things like that, I don't get to figure them out anymore. I just have them. And then the game becomes less fun because now I'm just looking for those opportunities. This is for me, right? As I'm explaining this, I can totally understand how some people might consider the looking for the knowing what the optimal strategies are and looking for the opportunities to enact those optimal strategies. That sounds fun to me. Like I understand the appeal of that. However, I know that will always be available to me at some point with it. And until then, I'm really enjoying the process of just playing Balatro and trying to figure the stuff out on my own, and probably making a lot of, suboptimal moves, really. And sometimes I realize those suboptimal moves right after I make them, and that's learning, right? So I'm still enjoying the process of, I'm still enjoying the pain of learning. I did have my first, I've had only one run of Balatro where I've ever gotten it to go into that engineering notation, right? Where it says like number E and another number. Actually, we should talk about, I just talked with a student about scientific notation. We should talk about scientific and engineering notation and stuff like that. Maybe, that could be a good topic for a stream, is just like notations in general, like all the different ways to represent numbers. We can talk about different base systems and stuff like that. Okay. Suffice it to say, Balatro presents dilemmas that can be undilemmaed with math, by applying math to it. But nobody is going to actually play Balatro that way. And in fact, I have once or twice busted out a calculator to calculate some odds. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the thing that made me want to do this, is the fact that I could. So yeah. And then I realized in hindsight, after I'd figured out for myself, that I was like, there's no way I could remember everything about the game state that made it possible to calculate those odds. And in fact, afterwards, I realized that I had missed some information that totally would have changed the calculation. So yeah, so I want to try that again. I want to try to, as I'm playing Balatro, I'm trying to keep an eye out for those dilemmas, those really juicy dilemmas. All right, I think there's only 12 minutes left. That doesn't feel like enough time to like actually go and find and get into a problem. And I also assume, especially with the night stream. Now, normally with like the after school streams, I'm gonna stay here until the end, in case somebody is rushing, trying to get there to get a question answered or something. But these late night ones, I'm going to assume if somebody was going to tune in. Now, granted, same thing could happen. Somebody might be hurrying home from work or something, and if I do in this early and I miss you, I'm so sorry. Please send me an email with your question, but also tell me I tried to tune in on Tuesday night, and your stream had ended 10 minutes early. I really wish I could have gotten an answer to this question. If I get messages like that, that'll teach me the lesson I need. That's really the only sort of thing I need to make me go for a long, long time after that. Go, nope, I'm gonna stay here till the end because that person who emailed me, they needed me. All right, I'm gonna stop. Get rid of this stuff. Get rid of that stuff. Yeah, we'll check the submissions one last time. Something to keep in mind, absolutely questions outside of stream times. I'll talk about them in the next stream, but also I might respond to them in between stream times and message and email you back. Because even if you submit via the form, it includes your email address, right? And so since I'm going to have access to that, I may as well leverage it to be able to send messages back to people. So yeah, please submit your questions regardless of whether I'm actively streaming at the moment or not, because your questions will be answered. And if you are able to tune into a stream, definitely do pop into the chat so you can ask follow-up or clarifying questions. Yeah, I will be back tomorrow after school. So stream will start at 3:30. I'll stream till 5. And then Thursday, there won't be a stream this week while I'm off doing my civic duty, jury duty. So yeah, I hope you all have a great night. And I will see you tomorrow at 3:30. Good night.